bubbles. Ooh.
Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
Welcome back to episode 2 of what we are now calling Triple Play, or CGQ Triple Play. I mentioned in the last installment that I wasn't sure what I was going to call the series. I think I had some other name for it then, but I even said that that's sort of a placeholder. And so we've settled on Triple Play. And it's funny that, just to give credit where credit is due, that was not my idea. It was a guy named Chris in the comment section of that first video who threw out a couple of ideas, and one of them was Triple Play, which he said was cool because then it's not necessarily like game specific. I mean, we play games, but you know, you also play albums or whatever, or I'm gonna go play a movie or whatever. So which is the kind of stuff that could be fodder for future installments. Like, it doesn't have to be 3 games. It could be like 3 albums or something. So anyway, just thank you, Chris, for the suggestion. Kind of funny because as soon as I read it, I was just like, duh, like, how did I not think of that? But I didn't. So I'm glad that that he did. Today, however, we are talking about video games. But the other thing, and I mean, this is not really a big deal, but I've had these sitting here for a while because I wanted to just show them, is just I picked up a couple of cool Hot Wheels. And just because they're nostalgic for me, and so maybe you guys will think they're cool. So we're just going to blow through them just real fast. But this first one, normally I only collect, like I have a pretty focused Hot Wheels collection. But sometimes I see cool stuff and I'll pick it up anyways. Like, I might not even keep them. Like, I might end up like, you know, I've got friends who have like little kids. And so a lot of times I give away my Hot Wheels to those kids, but they're just kind of fun to have for a little while. This first one is this Mazda. I don't know if the camera's going to focus. I changed the settings on the camera. So if it's not focusing, it's not my fault. So it says a Mazda Repu, R-E-P-U. I don't know what that means at all, but it's just, you know, when I was a kid, these mini trucks were like, most people who had pickup trucks had much smaller trucks. And in fact, when we bought our truck, we really just wanted a little truck like this. And I just have like a lot of memories. Like, you know, Stuart's mom had a truck very similar to this. I think it was an Isuzu, not a Mazda, but you know, that was back when it was like legal to ride in the back of pickup trucks. And so Stuart and I would ride anytime we went anywhere with his mom, you know, because only one of us would have been able to ride in the cab anyway. So we would always ride in the back just because it was more fun anyhow. So when I saw that, it just kind of brought back some memories. Next one, again, it's for nostalgia again. This is a Matchbox. This is a 1984 Toyota MR2. And I just always thought that these MR2s were such cool cars. When I was in high school, I had a friend, Joel, who had a red MR2. I don't know what year it was, but I mean, it looked like this, where it's sort of like boxy and angular. Like, that was the best look for the MR2. I'm not super in love with this color, but anyway, I saw that and I just thought like, oh, cool, MR2. And I just like Matchbox cars. It's funny because they're all made by Mattel now, but I just feel like Matchbox cars have like a little bit more detail. Third, this one, I don't even know why I bought this one really. It kind of just reminded me. So it's this, this is the kind of car I would have had, the kind of Hot Wheel car, I mean, when I was a kid. I feel like when I was a kid, a lot of the Hot Wheels I had were just like cars you would see out on the road. And I feel like now, when you go look at Hot Wheels, a lot of them are either like expensive cars, you know, like Ford GTs, or even just like customized Mustangs or Camaros, or straight up race cars. And when I was a kid, it just felt to me like more of the cars were just something you would see out on the street. And so I thought it was kind of neat when I saw this Ford Capri, 1970 Ford Capri. And the reason I got it is it just kind of reminds me of like the French Connection. Like, if you've seen the movie, The French Connection, that movie is older than this car. So like this car was not in the movie or anything, but like it reminds me of like the scene where, you know, this is probably the most famous scene in The French Connection, where Gene Hackman's character is, it's like a car chase, but like he's in the car, but the other guy I think is in like the elevated train. But it's this car chase scene. But the car reminds me, and even just the color, just sort of like this pea soup green. Just it just reminds me of like cars from that era, and so I thought that was cool. And then the last one is not actually a car, but I was just kind of excited when I found this. It's just the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek, of course. Focus? Not going to focus? Doesn't seem like it wants to focus on that. Anyway, I don't know which one. This seems like it's from one of the movies. I'm not enough of a Star Trek nerd. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I'm not enough of a Star Trek fan that I can like look at the different ones and go, oh, that's from this movie or that's from that movie. Like that's the A or the B or whatever. So, but I just thought that was neat. So anyway, that's the 4 Hot Wheels that I found. So then moving on to the games, and I should have said this right at the top of the video, but this is going to be a long video. So, but aren't they all, right? So I've got 3 games here to talk about, kind of a theme show in that today they are all Genesis games, which is like, I think Sega Genesis is like my favorite thing to talk about on the show anyway. It's funny, I've been asked, not too many times, but a few times, people have asked me like, what's my favorite video game console? And I really try to be like console agnostic, like I have, every major console, and I love them all for different reasons. And because of the nature of my show, like I don't want to be like biased towards one console or the other. But if I'm being honest, I play more Sega Genesis than any other console. And in fact, if it weren't for the PC Engine, I would say that I play more Genesis than all my other consoles combined. That's how much Genesis I play. So obviously I like the Genesis a lot. So that's why we're talking about that today. So this first game, this is kind of there's a bunch of backstory with this game. How am I going to tell this? All right. So first thing, there used to be a store here in Davis called Dimple Records. And it was like a local Sacramento area chain. And depending on where you live, that you probably had something similar where you were. It was a store that sold like, music, movies, and maybe video games. In the case of Dimple, they sold video games. But you'd go in there and you could buy, DVDs or Blu-rays or CDs, maybe a little bit of vinyl. But Dimple sold a lot of video games, but it was all used. So they weren't like a dealer for brand new games, but they would take video games and trade. And like every Dimple's location had a pretty big selection of video games. And that includes like old games. Like you could get, like they would take anything. And this was a time, after GameStop and EB Games stopped selling old stuff, which is fine because they're overpriced anyway. But you could go to Dimple and they would have like, NES games and Super Nintendo, Genesis, even like Atari cartridges you might see in television. Like I said, they just took everything. And this would have been back in like, I don't know, 2008, 2009, 2010, maybe. So like before the market went crazy. So there just weren't that many people like looking for games. And especially where I live, because it's a smaller town, there just weren't that many people going into that Dimple looking for old video games. And they didn't have like a huge selection anyway. It was just sort of like, there was a wall with shelves on it that had like more of the modern games, but they just had like this little display, like a little 4 foot by 4 foot, like island thing that had like shelves and pegs on both sides where they would hang, old stuff. But there weren't that many people going in there looking for stuff. And I was just sort of in the habit, I would go in there pretty much every day because I was already riding my bike to work and it was near where I worked. And so like, on my lunch hour or after work, I would just stop by and see what they had. Because, what's funny is like there weren't a lot of people going in there to buy games, but it seemed like there were a lot of people going in there to trade in their games. And I think what it was, probably a lot of it, was like parents whose kids had moved out of the house and they were just, where do I get rid of this stuff? And they would take it down to Dimple Records. That's kind of like my sense of the situation, because if it was gamers like me trading stuff in, then I would think there'd be a lot more stuff going out, which there wasn't. But I mean, I've talked about them before. Like I mentioned one time, my story about getting Gunstar Heroes, and I got it there like complete in the box for like $2.99, which even then was a deal. Like I think at no time in history was $3 for a complete in the box copy of Gunstar Heroes not a good deal. So, but anyway, so I used to go in there like all the time. And this was kind of before EverDrives were really a thing. Like maybe the original EverDrive was out. I don't remember, but I don't think any of the other EverDrives were out yet. So it was only the Genesis EverDrive that existed. And especially once I started my website, which of course later turned into the YouTube show, I was buying up games so that I could review them. And so I would go into like Dimple Records or wherever, and like any games I didn't have, if it looked at all interesting, I would grab it just because I'll review that. And so this one day I was meeting my friend for lunch, and story of my life, if you watch the show, my friend he was like my best friend basically, and he was moving across the country, like leaving. And this was going to be my last time seeing him. And so we were going to go have lunch together. But, I'm one of these people I have like this constant fear of being late. And so I always try to be early for like everything. And so of course I get there early, and it's like a block away from Dimple Records. And so I'm like, well, I'll kill time by going into Dimple. And I found this game, and I'd never heard of it. This is before, I didn't have all the gaming knowledge that I have now. So I didn't know what this game was. I'd never heard of it. And I grabbed it just based on the title alone. And that is, I don't know if it's going to focus, but the game is Cyborg Justice. It's not focusing. That's fine. It's Cyborg Justice, but it was cartridge only, and that's an important point. But I just, like I said, it's not focusing, but just trust me, the label art is really cool. And I mean, it's Cyborg Justice. Like, I feel like the word cyborg is like bacon. Like, if you add cyborg to the title of like any game, it already sounds cooler, right? Like, what if instead of like Tommy Lasorda Baseball, it was like Tommy Lasorda Cyborg Baseball? Well, now I really want to play it. And so when I saw Cyborg Justice, I was like, man, that game looks awesome, or at least sounds awesome, although the label does look awesome. So I bought it, and so the reason I told the story about meeting my friend for lunch is it's like this game is just sort of always going to be linked with that day. Like, I always remember the day I got Cyborg Justice, because it was the day I met my friend for lunch before he moved away. Although, just postscript for that, he ended up moving back, so he's back. So happy ending for me, I guess. But anyway, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go review Cyborg Justice for my website, And so that night, or after work or whatever, I get home and I pop Cyborg Justice there into the Genesis, and because I didn't even know what kind of game it was. I'm like, you can't, looking at this, what is it? Who knows? Maybe it's an action platformer. I don't know. So I put it in the Genesis, turn it on, and I see, oh, it's like a beat 'em up game, like a side-scrolling, Alien Storm, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, Final Fight, beat 'em up game. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I like beat 'em up games. But I'm playing the game, and it's like, I'm trying to like just you punch, kick, whatever, and like the controls don't feel that great, and the backgrounds are pretty boring, and the whole game just feels like, yeah, this game kind of sucks a little bit, I think. And I tried to give it a chance, but I thought, like, man, this game's really no good. Like, I'm kind of surprised that it's this bad. And I just threw the game in a box or whatever, and didn't really think any more of it, and just thought, like, okay, in my head I'd filed it away, like, Cyborg Justice is a trash game. And I don't know what episode it was, but a number of years ago, there was a magazine read through where Cyborg Justice was in one way or another featured in the magazine. And I mentioned, like, oh yeah, Cyborg Justice, that game really sucks. And I probably even told an abbreviated version of the story I just told you. I just said, like, oh yeah, that game kind of sucks, so like whatever, and then like moved along. And as is often the case, like, people left comments. saying like, oh no, I had that game when I was a kid. That game's pretty good, blah, blah, blah. And, it's funny because whenever I see comments like that, I'm kind of dismissive of them just because, when somebody tells you like, oh, I grew up with that game and like that game is good. It's like, okay, well, you can't be kind of objective about it because you have like a personal nostalgia with that game. Especially if you're someone like me, which I think a lot of us are, where, I didn't grow up, in a family that had a lot of money. So, the amount of video games that I had was pretty small. I only ever had like 7 NES games and probably about the same for the Genesis. And so even though some of the games I had, I don't think that they're good, and in some cases I hated them, I still played them and I still have copies of them because I have a soft spot for them. So when somebody tries to tell me like, oh, growing up I had Cyborg Justice and that game is good, I'm like, well, is it good or is it just like, nostalgia goggles or whatever? And so I didn't pay too much attention to comments like that. And then I don't know what happened. I don't know if I was trying to get ready for another magazine read through. I just don't know. Something happened not too terribly long ago where, I think this is what happened. I think I was doing research for an episode of the show that I'm working on, and I was on Usenet, and I think I read a review of Cyborg Justice, like from back in the day, like from like 1991 or whenever it came out. When did it come out? 93 it says, excuse me. Where somebody gave it like a positive review, and based on some of the things they said about how the game works, I was like, oh, like I didn't, seems like there's more to this game than I realized. And so I played the game, but, I think I read like maybe the FAQ or something that made me think like, this game's deeper than you think it is. You need to read the manual. And which brings up a really good point, which is like, I think more and more as we're all playing ROMs, like, maybe we don't have collections of complete in the box games. Like we have, EverDrives, or we're using Raspberry Pi or a Mister or PC based emulation. We don't have a manual to look through. And, a lot of games, there's like an FAQ online, but not every game. And I think sometimes you can kind of fall into the trap that I fell into, which is you think that you're just going to be able to figure it out. Like, well, it's 3 buttons. How complicated could it be? Well, it could be kind of complicated because, what happened is that I read the manual because like now I have a complete in the box copy of the game. So I have the manual, and turns out that Cyborg Justice is a far deeper game than you would think if you just fired it up like I did. It's got like a move set, like a complex move set that I would say like rivals or I don't want to say betters, but like more complicated than like a one-on-one fighting game as far as all of the combo moves and stuff you can pull off. Like, I mean, you can see when you play the game, like when you start the game, you can outfit your cyborg with like different kinds of legs, different kinds of arms, et cetera, et cetera. But I just kind of thought, playing the game back then, that it didn't seem like it made much difference. But it's because I didn't know how to play the game. And so now it's like, so in Cyborg Justice, you're fighting other cyborgs, right? Like on a surface of some planet. But like, you can rip their arms off, you can rip their legs off, like you can like eat their torso or something, and that's like a health restoration. There's like all kinds of other offensive moves you can do that like I didn't know about. And it's because I just judged the game without having a manual. And so my point in saying, what I said about playing ROMs and blah, 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 is that, it's not so hard now to find the manual for games like this online. I know I've talked before about the website segaretro.org. It's kind of like Wikipedia. They use the same software as Wikipedia, but like the whole website is just about Sega games and Sega consoles. And they have scanned manuals for a lot of Sega games, like just in PDF form. So you can download the actual manual. And so the thing is, like for me, it took Cyborg Justice from being a trash game, like I said, it sort of elevated it to like a weekend rental game. Cyborg Justice isn't a great game, but there's fun to be had here. It's still, I mean, even with all the combo moves and everything, they're difficult to pull off. I think the controls are kind of touchy as far as like, if you don't do it exactly right, it doesn't work. All the levels are really repetitive. It's like, you know, in the first stage, let's say you're on a planet that looks like the surface of the moon and just has some stuff in the background and it's all like blue. Well, then in the second level, it's going to be like the exact same, but like it's green or something. So it doesn't have like the variety, visual variety of, you know, like a Streets of Rage or a Golden Axe or something like that. So, you know, that, like I said, that's all to say that it's not like this is an awesome game, but it's a far better game than I initially thought it was. And if you're just looking for a game to screw around with, you want to try something new, if you haven't played Cyborg Justice, you should, but you should head over to Sega Retro and get the manual for it. And yeah. Oh, it's kind of funny. It says on the box here, build 216 different cyborgs. And that's because, like I said, you choose your arms and your legs and your body and whatnot. And I guess there's like 216 different permutations of that. But anyway, yeah, that's Cyborg Justice. So that is game number 1. Game number 2, again, a little bit of backstory, although far less. So about 3 years ago, I did an episode on the main channel called the Sega Genesis in 1990. And one of the games, I think it was wasn't it? Yeah, it was in 1990. One of the games I talked about was Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. And just, you know, long story short or whatever, you know, it's a great game. It was, I think, pretty much universally beloved by everybody back when it came out. You don't really hear anybody dragging the game now. It's just a great game. And I think this came up in a magazine read-through where one of the games that was being featured in the magazine was Fantasia, which came out in, I want to say, 1991. And, you know, I mentioned how if you go on the Usenet archives, you'll see people like warning everybody like, hey, don't go get Fantasia. It's not like Castle of Illusion. If you were somebody back then that played Castle of Illusion and really liked it, you know, if a couple of years or a year later, you went to the store and you saw, you know, same box art style and everything, Fantasia, and there's Mickey Mouse on the cover again, you were going to think like, oh, this is going to be like Castle of Illusion. It's like the sequel. And so I think some people fell into that trap or narrowly escaped that trap. And that's why you saw like the warning posts on Usenet about like, don't buy that game because it's not good. And the reason for that, this is kind of what I'm getting to, the box art thing, is that Castle of Illusion was developed by Sega of Japan. But Fantasia was developed by that French company. We always say like Infogrames, but it's a French company, so I think it's like Infogram, or I don't know how to do the throat thing that French people do, like gram. I'm guessing that's how you would say it, since it's French. But so the point is, like, Fantasia has like nothing to do with Castle of Illusion. And I think that, you know, maybe it's just my own personal perception. Sometimes I have a tendency to say like, oh, people think this or people think that, when really I'm just talking about me. Like, well, I think that, and so maybe I'm not alone. But I feel like there was the potential for what we'll call the Fantasia situation to sort of taint the Disney brand on the Genesis, right? Like if you were somebody, especially if you were somebody that actually bought Fantasia, you might get a little like trigger shy about buying any more Disney games when they came out. And but in Japan, I think the difference would have been more obvious. So in Japan, Castle of Illusion was the first in a 3-game series called like I Love Mickey Mouse. And like, so the first one was like I Love Mickey Mouse, Castle of Illusion. And there were 2 other games in the Genesis that were also, you know, it was like I Love Mickey Mouse, Castle of Illusion. And then this second game, which we got in the West as Quackshot, was in Japan called like I Love Donald Duck, right? So it was the whole I Love thing. And so you would know like, oh, this is like the second game in, you know, what we would consider the Castle of Illusion series. And but like I said, again, here it's Quackshot starring Donald Duck. So here it's not obvious at all that this game is related in any way to Castle of Illusion, when in Japan it would be obvious that this was the follow-up to Castle of Illusion. And the reason I'm bringing any of that up anyways is I just feel like there potentially far fewer people have played Quackshot than have played Castle of Illusion. Certainly it wasn't obvious to me until recently that this game was the follow-up to Castle of Illusion. And this is an awesome, awesome game. I don't even know how it happened that I played this game. I think I saw it on my EverDrive and was like, oh, I want to check that out. And I played it and I was just like blown away. Like, where have you been all my life? Like, basically, if you like Castle of Illusion, and if you don't, I don't really want to know you, then you should love this game, because it takes everything that was great about Castle of Illusion and makes it better. So, you know, it's still a side-scrolling action platformer. Here, obviously, the protagonist is Donald Duck instead of Mickey Mouse. The gameplay differs a little bit. Like in Castle of Illusion, you know, Mickey's main method of attack was like butt stomping people. And then your sort of secondary attack was you could pick up apples, and that was like your limited ammunition weapon. In this game, for whatever reason, I don't know if that's a reference to some Donald Duck cartoon that I don't recall, your main weapon is a plunger gun. Like, you shoot plungers at people and it stuns them. Like, it doesn't kill them or anything, but it stuns them. But then your limited use weapon is like it's like a popcorn shotgun or a popcorn gun. So it's like a shotgun, but it shoots like dried corn kernels, or it seems kind of weird. And then like when you pick up ammo, the little icon looks like a little ear of corn. I guess it's like a dried ear of corn, which I don't know, for people my age, like, I don't know if any of you remember this. I remember when I was a kid, especially if you went into like an older person's house where like maybe the decor was still like 70s, where like everything was like yellow and orange and brown. I feel like people would always have like those dried ears of corn. I think they even called it like Indian corn or something. And they would have them like hanging on the wall or as part of like a centerpiece display on the dining room table or something, like a few ears of that dried corn. Like, I don't know, whatever. But that's the ammo you pick up in Quackshot. And that kills the enemies if you do that. And it's like a spread shot because, you know, it's a shotgun. But the two things about this game that really kind of stood out for me, one of them, it's sort of like, I'm gonna make up a new term. It's semi-linear, right? So like usually an action platformer game is just like linear, right? I mean, yes and no, like Super Mario Brothers or Super Mario Brothers 2 or Sonic the Hedgehog or Castle of Illusion, linear, right? Like Super Mario 3, Super Mario World, not linear in that you can go back and visit old levels because it has like that whole world map thing going on. And so does Quackshot. So like, for example, you get through the first level and you get to like the end, and I'm using end in air quotes for a reason. And there's like, I forgot who, there's a dude there who tells you like, oh, Donald, you need to go, because you're in like Duckburg, right? And he says, oh, Donald, you got to go to like Mexico or something to go get like this thing. Because it kind of has like an archaeology kind of theme to it. It's almost like, you know, Donald Duck meets Indiana Jones kind of thing. I think the thing that you get is like an upgraded plunger gun so that you can shoot the plunger. You can shoot plungers at walls and then use that to like jump up the plungers and get to places that otherwise you couldn't reach. And then you go back to Duckburg, and now all of a sudden what was the end isn't anymore because now you can keep going in the level. But the way that all works is that you'll get to a place in a level where there's like a flag, and when you're at that flag, you can call an airplane that comes and picks you up and takes you out of the level. And when it does, like this map screen opens up that looks a lot like sort of those cutscenes in the Indiana Jones movies where it would kind of show that red line on that parchment map, like, you know, you're going from, you know, Cairo to whatever or whatever. It does that, but then you can pick where you want to go. So, yeah. So then, like, you know, you go back to Duckburg and then you get to the end of that and then it says, oh, now you have to go over here and do some other thing. So that's why I'm saying it's like semi-linear, because you do go back and revisit old levels, but maybe you have access now to areas that you didn't have access to before. So that's the first thing about it that I was going to say is sort of a standout feature. The other one is just like the audio visuals. So I've used clips from this on my show before, but, you know, there was this show back in like the late 80s and into the 90s called The Computer Chronicles, hosted by a guy named Stuart Shifei.
It's hard to find a 10-year-old boy who doesn't love to play video games. Today we'll take a look at the fascination and the technology of computer games on this edition of The Computer Chronicles.
And there was an episode where they had, you know, it was like, I think it was maybe like a Christmas episode where it's like, okay, here are like the hot new game consoles on the market. And so they had Al Nilsson from Sega of America showing off the Genesis, and I forgot the guy's name. It's some guy from NEC of America showing off the TurboGrafx 16. And the two games that Al showed off were Castle of Illusion and Michael Jackson's Moonwalker.
Here's Mickey Mouse, and if you take a look, he really looks exactly like himself. We haven't gone and sacrificed any of the detail on the character at all.
Is this new this year?
This is brand new. It just started shipping within the last couple of weeks.
And, you know, he was showing off Castle of Illusion and sort of talking about how, especially at that time, you know, when people's expectations as far as graphics went were a little bit lower, you know, he's talking about how it's like an interactive cartoon practically. And this game just takes that to the next level, I think. And one of the things that really surprised me is I really feel like the graphics in this game are like some of the best graphics on the Genesis. I was blown away by how good the graphics are, only because I don't ever hear anybody talking about this game for any reason. But, you know, even if you're not interested in this gameplay style, what a showcase game for the Genesis this is. So all that is to say that if you've never played Quackshot, just know that this is the real follow-up to Castle of Illusion, and you should 100% play it. And there's one other game in the series. There's World of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. So I saved this game for last because I know that a lot of you guys don't like sports games, and I figured that way I can just tell you this last game is a sports game, and if you know you don't care, then now's the time for you to turn off the video. For the rest of you that want to stick around, we're going to talk about, and this has also been featured on the show already, Arnold Palmer's Tournament Golf, which may or may not be in focus. So this was the second game, I think. Was the second or third? I think it was the third. I think this was the third Genesis game to come out after launch. I think it was Ghouls and Ghosts and whatever that soccer game, World Championship Soccer. I don't have it anymore. I got rid of it. World Championship. Let's just say it's World Championship Soccer. And then Arnold Palmer Tournament Golf. And the reason I wanted to talk about this game is just because I love this game. I will freely admit that the PGA Tour Golf Series by EA is those are the best golf games on the Genesis, with the exception of '96. But there are four. There's PGA Tour, PGA Tour 2, PGA European Tour, and PGA Tour 3. Those games are a lot more like sim-like. They're very unforgiving. They're really for people that are like maybe either really like hardcore sports gamers or just really into golf. And Arnold Palmer is a lot more of a casual, approachable game. And so while I admit that the PGA Tour games are better, I would say that this is my favorite golf game on the Genesis. So how about that? Just to give you an idea, I forgot if it was last weekend or 2 weekends ago. I played something like 8 rounds in one day of this game. Which what's 8 times 18? I don't even know. It's a lot. It's 144 maybe, something like that. That's basically what I spent my day doing, is hanging out down in the basement playing Arnold Palmer. The game's really interesting. It's so first of all, just because I find this to be an interesting factoid, in Japan, this was released as, I'm going to say this name wrong too, Naomichi Ozaki Supermasters, because Ozaki was a famous professional golfer in Japan. So, and I say that's interesting because a lot of these games that came out here that got like celebrity endorsements were just unendorsed in Japan. Like Tommy Lasorda Baseball was just Super League Baseball, and Pat Riley Basketball was like super, I want to say that was Super Real Basketball, but I mean, it's the same game, right? It's a different box and a different like title screen, and I feel like that's making noise into the microphone. Different title screen, and you know, all the text is in Japanese probably. I haven't actually even tried to play the Japanese version because why would I? Anyway, interesting factoid that it came out that way. But it's a really cool game. Something about the game that I find interesting is it almost feels like somebody in the late 80s decided to make a golf video game that seems like it was set in like the late 60s. Just sort of the atmosphere, just like the way your golfer is dressed looks a lot more like something my grandfather would have worn, which, you know, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying it looks like, you know, it looks very dated even by late 80s standards, but like I think that's cool. Like it gives it like its own atmosphere. And or like, you know, just the way the screens look when you're going through the process of setting up your game. Just it looks like, you know, oh, I'm going to be like in an old-timey country club, you know, like Caddyshack style or something. But the gameplay, it has 3 courses. There's a USA, Great Britain, and Japan, I believe. And you have 2 gameplay modes that you can choose. I forgot what they're called. There's like, you can just play around, or you can play in like the championship tournament. And if you play around, then you can pick which course you want to play on, and you can pick from 3 different sets of golf clubs. But if you play the tournament mode, you just start off with the base golf clubs, and you I don't know, you go to whatever course they send you to. I don't remember which one's first. And I mean, it's kind of interesting, kind of not. I don't super like the way the tournament is set up, because basically if you want to upgrade your clubs, so you win money at every tournament. Like even if you come in last place, which always kind of reminds me of that Happy Gilmore thing, you know, where he's like, oh great, so no matter what, I'm going to get some money. But so yeah, you get money no matter what, no matter where you come in the tournament, and you can't get game over. Like you can come in last place and the game's not going to like kick you out, but you can't actually do anything with that money. If you want to upgrade your clubs, you have to win them by winning a tournament, which is a lot harder than it would be to save up money and buy new clubs. Like as an example, when I played my like 8 rounds in a row of Arnold Palmer, the first round, the guy that won, the computer player, you know, that won, was like 15 unders. Like the guy shot like a 57, which is like basically impossible. Not impossible, but would be very difficult, right? That's like getting a par on 3 holes and then birdieing the other 15 of them. I didn't really care. I was just having a good time playing the game, because like, even though I was using, because this is an important point, is I was using, you know, the base clubs, but I was still competitive. It uses a 3-click swing system, which like, maybe it's because I'm like a retro grouch or something, but like if a game doesn't use a 3-click swing system, I'm just not going to play it. Like I don't, you know, a lot of these games, the only exception is Golden Tee with the trackball. Although even I should mention this because somebody was telling me the other day they'd never heard of this. There was a Golden Tee golf game for the PlayStation that used or uses the analog sticks. And so like you pull one stick back and push the other one forward, because that's like how Golden Tee works, except instead of a trackball, you're doing it with the sticks. But it works pretty well. I like that. But that's more of an arcade style game. Anyway, Arnold Palmer uses a 3-click swing system, but it's a little bit different than like the PGA Tour. So first of all, so you start your swing, the meter starts going up, and then your second click sets the power. But if you don't click before the meter like tops out, then like your swing doesn't count and you do it again, right? But like with PGA, it just bounces off the end and comes back. So like you can still click it sort of on the backswing, to use, you know, golfing parlance. So when I first started playing Arnold Palmer, because same thing actually, I bought my copy of Arnold Palmer at Dimple Records, but even longer ago than Cyborg Justice. I'm playing the game and I'm like, why isn't my swing like going? I keep getting to the top, because what happens is it gets to the top and sort of freezes for a fraction of a second, and then it kind of resets itself. And so I'm like, why won't it take my swing? And I finally had to realize you have to click it like a frame before it gets to the top. So even today, like sometimes if you're trying to like maximize your swing, like if you're driving, a lot of times I'll go to swing and I have to do it a few times because I'm trying to like maximize it. But then when it comes back down, so like in a PGA game, when it comes back to the origin, if you don't hit it right on the origin, you're gonna either hook or slice, right? But Arnold Palmer doesn't work that way. You can't accidentally hook or slice. You can like draw or fade, which is just like drawing and fading is hooking or slicing, but on purpose, like to get around something or whatever. You can set, like one of the things in Arnold Palmer you set is like your stance, right? Like based on like how much you're turned this way or this way is if you're gonna draw or fade. But you can't accidentally hook or slice by messing up the third click. What the third click does is it's basically like topspin or backspin. Like maybe if you're like shooting into the wind, or if you're driving and you want to try to get like some more distance after the ball hits the ground, then you'll click a little bit late. If you're trying to like have the ball go up in the air a little bit more, like a higher arc, because you're trying to have it land on the green and then die, you click a little bit early. I'm kind of belaboring this point because like I think that's the biggest challenge with the PGA Tour games and why they're more sort of unforgiving, but more realistic, because that's the number one thing. If you've ever played golf, you know, the number one thing to get wrong is to hook or slice. So I think the EA did a good job with the PGA Tour series of like bringing that into the video game. But because you can't do that in Arnold Palmer, your shot's always going to go straight, barring wind. It makes the game kind of more playable, I think, more approachable and sort of more fun. Like for me, it's just more, I don't want to play a game like that because I want to get frustrated. I just want to have a good time. So, you know, it's somewhere in between. You know, it's not Hot Shots Golf, but it's not like, you know, EA PGA Tour Golf. It's somewhere in the middle, and in my opinion, has a cool atmosphere, has good music. One thing I don't like about the game, and this is getting a little nitpicky, is that it doesn't tell you how far your shot went. And I hate that because, you know, you're trying to gauge like what clubs to use in what situation. Now, obviously I can just get the manual out and it'll tell you the distances for all the clubs. But to me, I don't know. I like it better if it just tells you, because then you get more of a natural feel for it. What it tells you instead is how many yards you still have to go. But if you didn't shoot, you know, if it wasn't like a straight line between the tee and the hole, like if it was like a dog leg or something, how many yards you still have to go tells you nothing about how far your ball went. So, but that, I mean, that's getting really nitpicky, and it doesn't bother me that much. It's just more of like, I mean, honestly, if you wanted to get really nerdy about it, you could start taking notes and stuff. And I have done that a little bit when I'm trying to like calculate, like, okay, which club should I use? And you know, you do a little bit of math of, you know, okay, well, there's wind or whatever. I got to use this club, but I'm going to arc it up. So I gotta, you know, and you get real nerdy about it, but I think it makes the game more fun. I've talked at length in the past about why I love golf video games so much, even though I really don't care very much about golf as a sport. So I'm not gonna repeat myself as far as that goes. So anyway, that's the 3 games for today. Cyborg Justice, Quackshot starring Donald Duck, and Arnold Palmer's Tournament Golf. 3 games that I think are well worth your attention. If you turn on your Genesis, you got Neverdrive, and you're staring at a list of ROMs and you don't know what to play. Any of those 3 games, if you hate sports games, only 2 of them, are definitely worth your attention. So that's going to do it for this episode of CGQ Triple Play. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.